3 weeks out of prison, he drives the cold Missouri night. There's strip malls and abandoned mines out on the left and the right. He drives into Mount Olive in the Becker Funeral Home. Where's Daddy's lying with a cold hard stare, black lung?
My great-grandfather, Giovanni Berruti, is buried in the Union Miners Cemetery, along with his wife and one of his sons, who died. The son died in the mine. He was crushed by a coal car in the Eggerville mine at the age of 27. Giovanni, my bisnonno, my great-grandfather, died of black lung at 43.
Dungeon down in those abandoned mines.
Wanted to recognize Mother Jones and bring our boy so he understands a little bit, and he's learned a lot today, and it reminds me a lot about Union history and how important it is. It's even more important today.
My father was also in the printing industry, unionized, and my grandfather was a Teamster. So yeah, we have family history of union activism, and I've always been active in unions that I've belonged to. I feel it's important to stay engaged.
Being in school, you don't really learn anything about labor history, and my dad's in a union, so I decided to come down here just to learn a little bit about it. And it's really interesting, and I personally believe that we really need to learn these in schools.
I came down to see the Mother Jones rededication today. Came down from Madison, Wisconsin. It's about 5 hours away, maybe a little more. I am a teacher in Wisconsin. My mother was a teacher. Both of my grandparents were in unions. One drove milk truck, one was a cheesemaker. My grandmas both worked in a battery factory. They were not union. I am here because I believe Mother Jones really tells the story that all of us can relate to, and that she is an inspiring figure who worked for social justice, and she believed in equality. And her roles, not only with adults but also with children, mean a lot to me, and I work that into my teaching whenever I can, because it's stories that kids can relate to, and it's about them and their families. And even though Mother Jones, was active quite a while ago, the kids still find lessons in her life today, and that's why I'm here.
The most dangerous woman in America has a tear formed in her eye for the sons and daughters of mining men who lost their way tonight.
Yes, my grandfather actually saw Mother Jones as a boy. He came off a train platform in 1911, West Virginia, with his dad, a single dad with 3 kids. And he was probably 7 or 8 years old. And there's Mother Jones, a little old lady on the train platform, giving a speech telling him to go back. They're bringing in to break a strike. And he had to translate for his dad, who spoke no English. His dad only spoke Polish, so he had to stand there and translate the whole transaction, what was happening. So that night they snuck out of the camp and went back to Pennsylvania. And my grandfather was a breaker boy then, and went underground at 14 as a full-fledged miner. Eventually moved to Detroit and was a sit-down striker at Chrysler in March of '37. So he kind of raised me. My granddad did. My grandparents, but my dad was killed at an early age. And so he passed all that on to me, and I pass it on to others.
The most dangerous woman in America smiles deep in the frozen ground.
My grandfather and my father and uncles were all union people and coal miners. I almost was in a coal mine, but my mother said no way. So I ended up in printing. And when I retired in 1997, I got involved with the cemetery board. And we always did try to get a museum, and we had a grant approved several years ago.
His dad was a coal miner.
Whoa.
Oh yeah, and talk about Mother Jones all the time.
We used to live in Mount Olive, both of us, and we used to play out here when we were kids. We would take our lunch out here and sit on Mother Jones's tombstone there, the monument, and there was all kinds of bushes, and we'd tell ghost stories and had all kinds of good fun. It was nice. And we always said the men that were up there were bronze. They were real men.
It's nice to be back again to see it all.
Yeah. My great-grandfather was a coal miner, and he lived in Gillespie, Illinois. He was come from Scotland to work in the gold mine. So yeah, it has a lot to do with it.
And believe me when I say we did just Bradley's buried right over here. It was in the spring of 22 when the Union strike was called.
I'm from the local area. This is Hillsboro Glass. Hillsboro, Illinois, we made the brown amber bottles. Closed it down in 1997. So I took the guys to Decatur, Illinois, and worked for Bridgestone Firestone at local 713. And last in, first out, in 2000 they laid me off and said look for a job. So in 2001, I got the chance to go to Des Moines, Iowa, and that's 310, the red, white, and blue one down there, same as this one.
I was crowned the 2001-2002 Labor Queen. And so, of course, in that contest, you had to be well-versed and well-known in your labor history, and a proud family member of a good standing labor union member.
Okay, well, thank you for everything. I sure appreciate you guys. Well, it's meant to me just like carrying on the legacy of Mother Jones, and what a great opportunity I've had to really make a difference in carrying on that legacy of her name through my employment with the Illinois AFL-CIO. But even had I not been doing it as staff, I would have been out here volunteering because it's such a great project and a great tribute to Mother Jones, who I think we all aspire to be like.
This hallowed ground has been my home for almost 85 years. It means more to me than any place I ever lived, and believe me, I've lived a lot of places. Let me tell you what happened here and why this place is so sacred to me. On October 12th, 1898, there was a massacre a few miles from here. It happened in Verdun, Illinois, and it happened because the owners of the Verdun Coal Company backed out of a deal they made with the miners to pay them higher wages. So the miners went on strike, and the operators made a plan to hire strikebreakers. They knew they could get scabs to work for lower wages. The first thing they did was to build a stockade around the entrance of the mine. Now, this mine was near the railroad tracks. The operators planned to use the train to bring black workers from Birmingham, Alabama. They thought they could get the workers off the train, into the stockade, and down into the mine, and the miners wouldn't be able to do anything about it. They also hired armed detectives to ensure the safe arrival of the workers. But they never told these workers they were being hired as scabs. So this was the situation. You had Winchester-bearing guards in lookout towers inside the stockade. You had the armed detectives on the train with the black workers, and out in the open field, lying on their bellies, you had the miners armed with their own shotguns and hunting rifles. The miners knew what was going on. They knew it as soon as they saw that stockade going up. And they waited and waited and waited for that train. Here it comes, they shouted. Go back to Alabama. Just then, shots were fired at the miners from inside the towers. Now, the workers realized what was going on. They refused to get off the train, and then shots rang out from all three sides. In the onslaught, 24 miners were wounded and 14 were killed. 5 guards were wounded and 4 were killed, and several black workers were wounded. Now, Governor John Tanner, bless his heart, he called out the National Guard to prevent the unloading of a second trainload of strikebreakers. And that was the first time any governor in this country ever sent armed troops to defend the workers. They were always sent to defend the owners. 6 months later, the owners of the Verdun Coal Company hired back the union miners at the wages they were originally promised. And remember Verdun became a union rallying cry in future labor fights. Now, 4 of the 14 miners that were killed were from Mount Olive. But the capitalist pirates that ran that town refused to let them be buried in any Mount Olive cemetery. So the comrades of the miners bought this acre of ground to be used as a union miner cemetery. And I always said that when I died, I wanted to sleep under the clay with those brave boys who knew they were easy targets, and they knew they were greatly outnumbered. Those brave boys willingly gave up their lives for a holy cause. And 32 years later, I got my wish. In 1930, I was buried here with my boys in Mount Olive.
2, 3, 4. It happened an hour ago, way down in that tunnel of coal, where the gas caught fire from somebody's lamp, and the miners are choking on smoke. Goodbye to my honey, little Bucky. Goodbye to the ones that I love. Most all of the miners won't be coming home tonight when that work whistle blows. Dear sister and brother, goodbye. Dear mother and father, goodbye. My fingers are weak, that I cannot write.
Well, we're here for the rededication of the monument for Mother Jones.
Honor a great female hellraiser.
Right, the rededication of the monument, and I'm also here for the museum. My father was a member of the United Auto Workers. My grandfather was a packing house worker. Several relatives were members of the United Packing House Workers. So I have some union background.
So you have a long history there, really extensive. How about you?
Yeah, all my family were union workers, and I worked for a union, so been a union member for all of my working life.
My great-great-grandfather was a carpenter in Montgomery County. I'll be buried just right back there in that back row.
I want to lift up some words to begin this invocation by Mother Jones. Words that share some of the passion in her heart and the compassion she felt. Mother Jones' words. Men's hearts are cold. They are indifferent. Not all the coal that is dug warms the world. It remains indifferent to the lives of those who risk their life and health down in the blackness of the earth, who crawl through dark, choking crevices with only a bit of lamp on their caps to light their silent way, whose backs are bent with toil, whose very bones ache, whose happiness is sleep, and whose peace is death.
2 years ago, 1 month, a tornado hit Mount Olive. Instead of having a disaster, people in the community picked up their boots, tied them up, went to work. The former mayor obtained a grant for $100,000. With the help of that, we have now got the Mother Jones Museum. When we sat down and we talked with the company that was going to build it, we asked it to be done union, and it was. I'd like to thank Cordy Lujan. They respected our wishes. They got the building done. There's a few things that aren't finished. I'd like to thank everyone who donated for the monument, the restoration, the laborers that came out here and donated their time on the weekends and Saturdays to get this project finished. It's just been an unbelievable 2 years for me.
Let me begin by saying this and asking this question to everyone who has gathered today. Why build a monument? Why was this monument behind us that we are rededicating today built years ago? The answer is pretty simple, in my opinion. Some things are so great, some efforts are so great that they should never be forgotten. Some things are so great that their relevancy spans generations and should be remembered not just for the sake of nostalgia or for the sake of history, but because their cause is good and just. Certainly the work of Mary Harris Jones or Mother Jones is one of those things. Because of the work of the souls who lie among us today in the cemetery, working conditions are better, child labor is gone, standards of living are higher, a safe work environment is the law of the land, and we live in a better nation because of you. Thank you.
There's one story I want to make sure that gets told about Mother Jones. She wasn't shy, as we all know, and I'm sure many more speakers behind me will talk about her ability to do what she knew was right. She walked right into John D. Rockefeller one day and said, "You need to go visit your mines, your fields in Colorado, because those working conditions are deplorable." Well, John D. Rockefeller took her up on that request, and he made changes. That's just one example of where one person can make a difference in the lives of so many. Today we honor her. We honor those who made this monument happen. I have to say thank you to the many men and women in organized labor who are here today, but also who did the hard work to ensure that the monument that stands behind me stands much longer than just during this celebration today.
When she began working for the United Mine Workers in 1890, the union had 10,000 members. Within a few years, that number grew to 300,000. In 1902, she was arrested in West Virginia for ignoring a court injunction that banned meetings by striking coal miners. At her trial, the prosecutor branded her, quote, "the most dangerous woman in America." He said she comes into a state where peace and prosperity reign, crooks her finger, and 20,000 contented men lay down their tools and walk off the job. She was hauled before a committee of the U.S. House of Representatives and asked by the committee chairman where she lived. She said she didn't have a real address. Quote, "I reside wherever there's a good fight against wrong, all over the country. Wherever the workers are fighting the robbers, I go there." Her most famous rallying cry, of course, was "Pray for the dead and fight like hell for the living." She chose to be buried right here in this cemetery. If Mother Jones and her boys were alive today, we know what they would tell us to do when we leave this celebration. Fight like hell for the living. Fight like hell to preserve the rights of working people in America and in Illinois to form and join unions and all of the other basic rights for which earlier generations fought and too many people died. They would tell us to fight these phony right to work for less laws. We know better than that. They would tell us to fight for an increase in the minimum wage to make it a living wage so that people who go to work 40 hours a week don't live in poverty in the United States of America. And they would tell us, don't turn Medicare into a voucher program and don't turn Social Security over to Wall Street.
Now, Dan Kane, and before I start, I want to tell you, I kind of feel almost like the guy that's in the parade that's following up after the horses here today. Because just about everything in which I've had in my speech has already just pretty well been mentioned. But there are a few things that I'm going to take and certainly add into this. Now, I want to tell you one thing right now, and I'm going to probably make someone mad at me out there, and that's all right. I've had plenty mad at me before in the past, but it's the truth, and you know it's the truth. If Mother Jones was standing here with us today, she would be ready to march to the state capitol, to this new elected governor's office, and she would be wanting to sit down and have some very stern conversations with him, with those piercing eyes there. And as a matter of fact, when I state that, under the circumstances that stern words, I'm using that lightly there, because as you all know, Mother Jones, she was pretty explicit in her vocabulary, especially when she was mad on that. But there is no doubt that that would happen, and she would begin that march immediately on that.
When the union's inspiration through the workers' blood shall run, there can be no power greater in being there beneath the sun. But what force on earth is weaker than the feeble strength of one that the union makes so strong? Everybody now. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. The union makes us strong. In our hands is placed a power greater than their hoarded gold, greater than the strength of armies magnified 1,000-told. We can bring to birth a new world on the ashes of the old when the union makes us strong. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. For the union makes us strong. One more chorus now. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. For the union makes us strong. All right, Mother Jones forever.
I'm going back to Hard Creek Mountain. I'm going to the Blair Mountain Hill. I'm gonna fight for the Union. Lord, I know it's Mother Jones's will, and I know it's Mother Jones's will. Well, the children were laying in the tent. They were laying upon the quilt, while the thugs were rambling through their tents, pouring kerosene in their milk, pouring kerosene in the milk. Well, I'm going to that Hard Creek Mountain, going back to old Blair Mountain Hill. I'm a-gonna fight for my Union, for I know it's Mother Jones's will, and I know it's Mother Jones's will.